And every time that you go through an infertility treatment, you wait for this phone call from a nurse. And the nurse will call you around 1:00 in the afternoon. I remember seeing the phone number pop up on caller ID. Like every single piece of that, I can still feel it in my soul. And she'll tell you whether or not you're pregnant. And we got so many calls of no's, so many no's. And I always found it very interesting that after every single time, I would say thank you. I would say thank you to this woman who just dashed my dreams. This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. Quick word about this episode. I had thought this was going to be a quick, short kind of look into our life and our infertility and adoption story. And I would give you some tips and some things that I've learned along the way to kind of help the people through it that you might know. And lo and behold, this became one of the longest episodes that I've recorded. It was emotional, obviously, at times. And there was just so much on my heart that I needed to talk to you about. So we have cut it into 2 episodes. You're going to be able to hear all about my story with Grace in Georgia, and then also our story with Ben. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of great tangible advice with how to talk to others about this, whether you're going through it or you know somebody else who is going through it as well. And it was supposed to happen during Infertility Awareness Week, but instead, we're putting it right here, kind of in between my kids' birthdays. Ben and Grace are very, very close in birthdays. So that's why we're doing it now. I hope you enjoy and that you're able to get something really good from myself and, of course, from the Lord when it comes to infertility and adoption. Take a listen. I'm out of the studio in my living room today because this is a very personal discussion. In fact, we were supposed to have this discussion, or we did have this discussion months ago, because my infertility and adoption story was supposed to air and be presented over Infertility Awareness Week, but it was lost. You know, God had different plans. He wanted me to do it a little different, I guess. So I have moved out of the studio into kind of a more personal space. You see, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, all the pictures of my family behind me. And this is the table. The Lord calls us to gather around the table. This is where my family gathers all of the time to talk you through my adoption and infertility story. The first thing I want to do is pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you bring men to this conversation to hear words of wisdom from you on how to deal with this struggle that is infertility and the long road and difficult road of adoption. I pray that you bring grandparents and mothers and aunts and sisters who can help support the women who are going through this, and husbands and uncles and cousins and grandfathers who can help support the men who stand alongside these women who go through infertility and adoption, because it's hard. Lord, thank you for being with me every step of the way and every single mistake that I made and all of that pain. I was the one by the well. I still am to this day, Lord, and you will always come to me. You are always here, Lord. Speak through me in this podcast. Amen. If you've been following along for the last 6 months, we always kind of joke who's the first one to cry on the podcast. So far, I think the quickest was Mally Roncall, and then the most was Lawrence Zarian. I think I just went the quickest, just there, right there. I feel like there needs to be a bell to ding or something like that. My goal for this is for you to be able to learn something to say to a woman who's going through infertility, or how to better have the right words around having an adopted family member or people that you know who are adopting, because it's very, very common these days. The statistics for infertility and adoption are astronomical. And I think the adoption piece of that is beautiful and wonderful. I would pray that as that adoption rate goes up, the abortion rate goes down. And I would pray that adoption could get easier for these people who are waiting, these couples that are waiting, and for the women and the men who alongside those women are giving up the babies. Infertility, unfortunately, is so much more common these days, and that has a lot to do with so many different factors, including the toxins in our life, the food that we eat, the way that our hormones are not regulated as well because of that, because of the way that we live, the disruption of our circadian rhythms, obesity, diabetes, diabetes, the list goes on and on and on. So infertility is on the rise as well. So I feel like every single one of you probably knows somebody, you are somebody, one degree of separation from somebody. So stick with me through this episode. I'm going to give you at least 5 things to say and not to say in infertility, and the same with adoption. But first, my story. My first miscarriage in my 20s, my mom showed up at the door of my apartment or my house with my husband. He was out during the day, and she brought with her maternity clothes and baby dolls and my 13-year-old brother. I lived in about 600 square feet and had 1 bathroom, and I was hemorrhaging from, or bleeding profusely from, my first miscarriage. And she came to comfort me and stay the night with my 13-year-old brother in 1 bathroom with baby dolls and maternity clothes. Her initial reaction to my first miscarriage broke me even further. I wanted nothing more than my mom to comfort me, and she meant to. She came wanting to do that. It wasn't her fault. And at this point, we know that she was likely already struggling with mild cognitive impairment and probably had some executive decision-making processes that were off at that time. But I think even more than that, she had never been held and comforted in the right way after miscarrying. In fact, as we sat there over the next, I only really let her stay for about 36 hours. My husband was also upset about the way that she had reacted to this. And so, but in that time, we did sit and talk for a while, and she couldn't talk about her miscarriages. I never really got clear pictures of what happened and when. And in fact, I recount this story in detail in my first book, 5 Months Apart, A Story of Infertility, Faith, and Grace. So you can read in depth in that one. I don't think that she had, I know my grandmother wasn't the type of person who would go to her and comfort her. And at that time in the early 70s, it wasn't something that you talked about. I found that in my first miscarriage, and then after that, I needed to talk about it. We talk a lot about that on the podcast, that in order to heal from things, you have to share your story. You have to get it out. I was recently at a conference on longevity, and Dr. David Rubin spoke about depression. He's the creator of Apollo Health, which I wear the Apollo band and I love it. He said that depression, we are now learning, and a couple of different things. First of all, it's not chemical like we always thought. And again, this is what his presentation was about. It's not chemical. It is actually a result of unmet trauma. So it is, a trauma happens. Let's say you stub your toe. And if you stub your toe and ignore it, you're not dealing with the trauma. If you stub your toe and you turn to somebody and say, I stubbed my toe, and they say to you, I'm sorry, are you okay? Can I do anything? The trauma is met and you make it through. If you turn to the person and say, I stubbed my toe, and they say, oh, suck it up, it didn't happen, or oh, whatever, and they turn away from you, that trauma is not met. So it's the way that you deal with a trauma that can then lead to depression or not to depression. And I think that a lot of women who have gone through miscarriage, infertility, or going through adoption are either the toe is being stubbed and they're not talking about it, or they're turning to somebody and that person is not validating them, is not making them feel heard and loved. And that's what's leading to a depression. That's why it is so important, if you're listening to this and you have somebody in your life who is going through miscarriage, is going through infertility, or is going through adoption, all can be big T traumas in somebody's life. It's essential that you're the person that they turn to and say, I'm going through this. And you say, I'm here. How can I help? I love you. You don't say, here are some maternity clothes because you're going to be fine. You'll eventually be a mom. That's not validating somebody's feelings. Being able to share your own story, because the statistics show us that the majority of you have probably gone through miscarriage, females, obviously. And a good portion of you have gone through infertility. So that's how my story began when it came to miscarriage. We never got pregnant again naturally, my husband and I. It was interesting because we met young, at least I was young. I got married at 25. I never thought that would happen, but it did. And he was a Christian and he was funny and he made me laugh and he was handsome and he had a car and a job and all of these things. And we were the first of our friends to want to start to have a family. And we were the first ones to get pregnant, and then we lost, and we were never able to do it again. For about a year, we went to just a regular doctor, and they said, keep trying. I mean, I was young at the time. I was 28, and it still didn't happen, and it still didn't work. So eventually we went to a fertility specialist, and we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which is about 15% of fertility out there. At least it was back then. I always wonder now, if I were to go back to get tested, if they could actually tell me what it was. And interestingly enough, fast forward to age 45, when I was finally diagnosed with endometriosis, chances are it was there back when I was trying to get pregnant. But they did all the tests. We did the dye tests, where that dye goes through your fallopian tubes and they look, ultrasounds on top of ultrasounds, and they never saw the endometriosis. So it's very interesting, but I'm sure that's why I was infertile. So that he was okay, that I was okay. We just weren't getting pregnant and staying pregnant. We ended up doing a round of IVF, which was absolutely excruciating for me. I did not respond well with IVF. We did that after we tried a couple of rounds of IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. That's what we would affectionately call the turkey baster method, where they take the sperm and they honestly put it in something that's like a turkey baster, and then they stimulate you or the woman to have more follicles, which are what holds the eggs, and then more eggs, so that they can then put the sperm into the egg. They put the catheter up there. You're awake during the entire procedure. They have the camera and they see exactly where to put the sperm, and they pierce the egg with the sperm. So that's an IUI. That didn't work. We did a couple of those. We had good insurance at the time because I was working for ABC News. So we just decided to keep going. And we had IVF, which I was extremely overstimulated. I had so many eggs and so many follicles. I was very, very uncomfortable, but I responded really well. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So I think I had something like 28 eggs. And then they put the egg and the sperm together, and then they make those into embryos. So then from there, we had 23 great embryos. And then they call you every day and tell you how your embryos are multiplying, as if they would inside your body, to get stronger and stronger. About 3 to 7 days later, they will put in the strongest ones. So you have to keep on listening over and over again and calling every time they tell you whether or not your embryos are doing well. We ended up having 13 that were really, really great. And they put in 2 at a time because I was young. And every time that you go through an infertility treatments, you wait for this phone call from a nurse. And the nurse will call you around 1:00 in the afternoon. I remember the time I remember seeing the phone number pop up on caller ID. Like, every single piece of that, I can still feel it in my soul. And she'll tell you whether or not you're pregnant. And we got so many calls of no's, so many no's. And I always found it very interesting that after every single time, I would say thank you. I would say thank you to this woman who just dashed my dreams. And it's because I'm a good Christian girl and I am kind. And it wasn't this woman's fault, but I think that it's a good indicator of how we deal with miscarriage and infertility and adoption as well. We just kind of placate it and say everything is fine. And, oh, it's okay. Even when somebody says something to you, I'm sorry for your loss. Oh, it's okay. It's okay for us to have feelings of grief and not say it's okay. We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good. I do not really have much makeup on, a little bit of lip gloss, and my absolute favorite, Dr. Deness Skin Science. This is her Tinted Defense Day Cream SPF 40. You can see by my bottle that I use it every single day, and this is the supersized bottle, which is what you absolutely need. It gives me the protection that I need because it has SPF. It gives me the blur because it has those pigments. But most importantly, like all of Dr. Deness's skincare products, they actually work. She uses the most of the efficacious ingredients, and they're all clean. You know, I wouldn't talk to you about anything in your skincare or your beauty that wasn't clean beauty. This brand really has changed my skin. Listen, I'm 47 years old. I need a little extra help. I'll tell you where to start. Other than the Skin Defense, you're going to need Hydro Shield. Oh my goodness, the hydration. It has changed my deeply dehydrated life and makes it look like perhaps I got all the sleep and I have no stress and I didn't cry in the bathroom after my kids went to sleep at night. It really, really works. Everything does. And with clean beauty. And because we want you to have your own midlife glow up and be able to be, I don't know, maybe makeup free from time to time like I am right now. Dr. Denise has given you a little something off. Go to drdenise.com and use the code STREST. That's STREST for a discount. You'll thank me later. Now back to the show. So we did IUI, we did IVF, still didn't work. We finally decided, and it wasn't finally because we'd always thought about it. My brother is adopted and my sister-in-law is adopted and my cousin is adopted. So it's a big part of our life. And we had about 2 years into it decided, well, we'll adopt. And it wasn't even, we'll adopt and have biological children or we'll just adopt. It wasn't a big thought for us. It was an easy decision for us. When I counsel women through deciding whether or not to adopt, I want you to really think about it. Some people will be like me and it'll be a no-brainer. But there is a loss that comes with deciding to adopt because you decide that you're going to let go of the possibility or the fact that you're going to carry a child inside your womb. And there's something about that as women, I mean, hormonally and biologically, we want to do. So you have to give that up. And yes, you can and you will love an adopted child as much, if not more than a biological child. Hear that. Understand that. Love has a capacity to multiply and bloom. And in fact, when you adopt a child, the passion that comes with the fight, because it's a fight. There is not an easy adoption out there. I've yet to hear one. The way that you fight for that child makes that love burn even stronger. So you should never worry that you won't love a child that didn't come from your womb because you will. God will give you that. Your heart will grow and expand. But you could have to go through a time of grieving the fact that you didn't carry and create a life inside of you. For us at the time when we decided to adopt, it wasn't even a thought for us. We just knew we would. So we were simultaneously still going through infertility treatments because I had like one more left on my insurance. And then also we had signed up to be matched with adoption. We had literally $0 extra. I remember my kind, sweet mother-in-law at one point, she came over to our house and when we were going through all this a couple of years in, and she just left a check on the refrigerator for $8,000. She knew that we didn't have any money to do this anymore. We were paying for these infertility treatments. We had just signed up and given away like our last few dollars as a deposit for the adoption. And she left this check and then she texted us and she's like, whether it's for fertility treatments or it's for adoption, just take this. It was so kind. And I know it was hard for her to talk about it too. And she had adopted. And I know that it was difficult for her to get the words out because again, this generation before mine, I'm 47, it was even harder for them to talk about miscarriage and adoption than it is ours. It's getting easier and easier, I think. But anyway, her kindness was just amazing to me at the time. But we decided to go with a adoption facilitator. So not an agency, but a facilitator. Now this facilitator, there's not teams here. Everybody's on the same team. But if there were teams, this would be like team birth mom. So they would go and they would find and help women in dire stress. We're talking about homeless, drug addicts, in the hospital giving birth, have nobody. They would take care of these women and help them not have an abortion and find places for their babies. They were not really meant there to hold hands and be helpful and supportive of the adoptive parents. That wasn't their job. Their main focus were these at-risk women. And it was a hard job. And these were hard, broken people after everything that they had seen. And I remember them asking us, because I was a reporter at the time for ABC News, and they assumed we had tons of money. And yet, no. I mean, I think back in the day, I was making maybe $70,000 a year, which wasn't horrible, but we're talking 20 some years ago. And I was in San Diego. So we had no money because we lived in San Diego, which is like the most expensive place ever. And so we had saved and saved and saved and canceled cable and done everything we could to be able to continue to afford all of the drugs that I was on and then also sign up to go with an adoption agency. Had we had $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, which is what adoption agencies cost, we would have gone that route, but we just didn't have it. So we signed up with this adoption agency and we started getting phone calls right away. And we said no 8 times because they kept on calling us with babies who were being born in the hospital. Mom had cerebral palsy. Birth mom was drunk or a drug addict. Like, baby was very, very premature. You had to decide right then and there, do you want this baby? And I was 29 years old. And again, we had very little resources. And we just kept on feeling like the Lord wasn't telling us that our first child should be a special needs child, because that's what a lot of these children were likely going to be. So we kept on saying no. And every single time it was heartbreak, because I kept on second guessing whether or not the Lord was saying, this was supposed to be your baby. Why did you say no? But it would come and go like that. I definitely had that peace. So if you've listened to past episodes and we talk about making sure that you're living out your purpose, and how you know you're living out your purpose is if you feel the Lord's peace, his presence, and his participation. And I definitely felt his presence and participation in this entire journey. Peace came and went. But looking back at it now, the reason that it was hard to have his peace was because I wasn't necessarily doing the things that allowed him to infuse me with peace. I mean, I was very hard on myself. I pushed myself to work harder than ever. I was drinking a lot. Not when I was going through infertility treatment, but on the other times, or not eating well. But again, I was in my 20s, so everybody drank a lot, I guess. But I was using that to cope with being sad. I had unhealthy relationships with people to kind of mask the fact that all I wanted was a baby. So I had a hard time feeling God's peace in anything, because I really wasn't opening myself up to him and making him the center of this grief that I was going through. We did our final round of fertile embryo transfer. So remember those 13 embryos that we had, and we used a couple and they didn't work. And then they froze a whole bunch, and then they thawed a couple and they put them back into me. Our final round of fertile embryo transfer worked. We got pregnant. I remember getting the phone call, and my husband was out of town, and my mother-in-law came to be with me at that time because my husband didn't want me to be alone when the phone call came in, because those 1 o'clock phone calls were the worst. And I was absolutely speechless. And they used the words cautiously optimistic, which I would hear again in my lifetime later, that my numbers were really, really high. So you're listening for your progesterone numbers and all of the stuff that's going on. And they want all of that to go high, 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 and to double and triple. This was February. Let's back up a month to January. We were presented with a birth mother who was 4 months pregnant. This was not her first child. And they asked if we wanted our packet to be presented to her, and we did. And she chose us. And we went and met her and the birth father, who they were kind of together at the time, but kind of not. And I remember being at lunch with them and just thinking, and she was young. She was younger than me, in her 20s, and just thinking how amazing it was that she had a baby inside of her, and how I wanted to protect her. I wanted to hold on to her. I wanted to care for her. We went and met her other kids. She had 2 other kids, and I remember thinking, I want them. I will take them. I will protect this entire family. I just want them to be happy. I want the babies to be happy. I want her to be happy. They chose us, and we started this really, really long process of adoption, because she was only 4 months pregnant. So it was a month later, and we were already in the throes of this adoption. We had given them a whole bunch of money, because in California, you can support the birth parents. So we were paying for everything. They didn't have a lot, but we wanted to get them a better apartment. We were paying for their food. The adoption was just wrought with, I don't even know the word to use, unfairness. There was something about the fact that we could pay and she could continue to ask, or birth father could continue to ask for whatever they wanted. And if we said no, they could change their mind. And they did at times. And it scared us to death. And we kept on going back to the adoption agency or facilitator and saying, should we write her another check to pay off her credit card bill? Should we write her? They're like, well, you don't have to, but she could also always go with somebody else if you don't. And that's why in different states, you don't pay birth parent expenses. But in California, you did. And we just felt like if we didn't keep on giving them money, they weren't going to give us the baby. And that was so corrupt to us, just so corrupt. And this is part of why adoption is so broken. But we felt the Lord's presence and participation, and at times peace. And I knew that we were doing something good for the birth mother and the birth father as well. Like, we supported her. I talked to her all the time. I tried to hold her hand and show her Jesus in all of this and help take care of her kids too. So in February, when we got the call that we were pregnant, we were pretty blown away, but we were excited. 2 babies. Like, we were thrilled. And we kept on asking the fertility clinic, there's just one in there, right? It's not twins. It's not twins. Because can you imagine if we had 3 in our 600 square feet with like little to no money? But there was just one. And about 5 months later, Grace was born from the womb of another. And about 5 months after that, Georgia was born, and she came unwillingly out of my womb. My pregnancy, the entire time I was scared. I could never really relax. The best thing that anybody told me during that was just to say the serenity prayer over and over again. Lord, grant me they say it in AA too, and Al-Anon, because I couldn't control it. This was definitely an uncontrollable situation. I could have easily lost that baby as well. And actually, there came a time before Grace was born that I started bleeding a lot. And they thought that perhaps there were twins in there and that I lost one of them, which was what that was all about. And I thought for sure I was losing the baby at that time. And it was just scary beyond. The entire thing was scary. Second most scariest time was having to tell our birth parents that I was pregnant, because when we went into this agreement for adoption, we had no children and I was infertile. And then all of a sudden I'm having a baby, and the birth mother was excited for us. She was excited that we were going to have siblings. The birth father, who had been in and out of the picture, he had a rough life. He had been in prison. He had some substance abuse issues. So when it came to the end, actually, when Grace was being born, he had threatened to change his mind and to take the baby, and they weren't together at this time. So we just wanted to support her the entire time. Anyway, he wasn't as thrilled about the fact that I was pregnant, asked if that meant that they could keep the baby. But again, mind you, the birth mother was very sure in her decision. She had tried to abort twice, and it was by the grace of God that somebody met her at the abortion clinic and told her about adoption and that she did this. So 5 months apart, 2 babies. It was a roller coaster. The entire time that I was pregnant and that we were trying to get through this adoption process with a very high stress birth parents was hard on me. And my husband, there were tears. There were times when it could have fallen apart, and we just had to continue to rely on the Lord. And then going through 9.5, 10 months of being pregnant while having an infant at the same time, that was always quite funny to people once Grace was born and I was big pregnant. But what's going on here? To explain what was going on. But our babies were born and we were beyond thrilled. They somehow kind of looked alike. I think all babies kind of do, but Grace, if you've seen pictures of her on social media, is full Mexican, and Georgia is not a lick of. So the fact that they looked alike in the beginning was kind of funny. And they did for quite a while. They don't anymore. And we had 2 babies in 600 square feet in one bedroom, but we've never been happier about that. Hey, quick break. Are you feeling your age a little bit? Joints or maybe brittle hair or face, skin? One supplement can address all of that. It's collagen. And my favorite by far is Ancient Nutrition. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body, so we need it. And Ancient Nutrition is my favorite because it's made from real quality ingredients that I know that I can trust. In just 2 scoops of their multi-collagen protein, you are getting 20 grams of protein to help support your hair, your skin, your nails, your joints. And as an added bonus, you're also getting vitamin C and probiotics. That's for gut and digestive health support. It's the perfect addition to any beverage. You can put it in your shake and things like that, but also overnight oats, baked goods. But I put the unflavored multi-collagen protein in my black coffee every single morning. It's perfect because it mixes really easily and it's virtually tasteless. I especially also love their strawberry lemonade because it's very super refreshing in the summer, but whatever you need to get your collagen. Multi-collagen protein is more than just collagen. It's real results that you can see and feel from ingredients that you can trust. That's why I'm talking about it. Right now, you can get 25% off. You go to ancientnutrition.com and put in the code STREST25. That's STREST 25. STREST25 at ancientnutrition.com. And that's going to get you 25% off site-wide. Make sure you grab my favorite for the dark coffee, which is your multi-collagen protein, but then also try something else as well. You're going to love it. That's STREST25 for 25% off. Get your collagen. Now, let's talk about infertility and miscarriage because they're usually closely linked. If somebody is going through infertility, they've probably gone through miscarriages or are going through miscarriages. And that comes to my first point, which it is all a loss. When somebody is going through infertility, even when they don't have a miscarriage, it has the same feelings and emotions every time they get that. For me, it was a 1 p.m. phone call. Every time they get that phone call that it didn't work. Here's why. You go into this and you have a procedure and then you're waiting for 2 weeks. So it's like during the procedure, you've been told you're pregnant. Basically, they have put something in you that would make you pregnant. So you feel like you're pregnant and you have hormones that would be like you're pregnant as well. So when you get the phone call that you're not pregnant, it feels like you've had a miscarriage. It is a loss. It is that same level of grief for most people. Now, we can get into the weeds about if somebody's 6 months pregnant, it's a different type of miscarriage than if they're 6 weeks pregnant. Absolutely. I have not been 6 months pregnant and miscarried. I have not had an actual death of a baby because at 6 months pregnant, sometimes they can live outside of the womb. But I have gone through miscarriage and I have gone through failed infertility and I have gone through failed and broken adoptions. All three feel the same. Even in the adoption situation, which we'll talk about here in just a second, when we were matched and it failed, it was just as bad, if not worse, of a grief and a loss as the miscarriage and the failed infertility. So the reason that I bring this up is because when you're talking to somebody and maybe they have gone through infertility, they've gotten the news that they're infertile, maybe they had a procedure and it didn't work. Talking to them as if, oh, it's okay. It's not like you lost a baby is not true. It does feel like they lost a baby. Same thing with adoption. If somebody is in the adoption process and it falls through, you need to treat them or have in your mind that it is just like they literally physically lost a baby because it has that same weight. So loss is loss is loss. And I could be talking to somebody who's going through grief because of a different type of loss. And a lot of the feelings are the same. Now, granted, there is that emotional, hormonal piece of it when you're actually pregnant or when you're going through infertility because they put you on so many drugs, but it is still a loss. So how you're talking to that person, don't diminish it if it's just a failed infertility attempt or it's a failed adoption. Second point for infertility, keep talking to them. There were times when I was going through the miscarriages and the infertility and couldn't get pregnant, when there were certain people, and God bless them in my life. In fact, I can remember one friend who actually had the courage to say to me, I'm not sure what to say to you. I don't know if I should keep calling you or if it just makes it worse. That took a lot of courage on her part to be able to say that. I get that. And now having, 15, 20 years since that first round, and having gone through really tough times with other friends, having walked women through infertility and walked women through miscarriage and walked with friends through losses of spouses, losses of children, bad diagnoses. I understand that feeling of, I don't know what to say, so maybe I'm just not going to say anything. At least in my situation, and most women that I've talked to, that isn't the answer when it comes to infertility and miscarriage. Keep showing up. Keep calling, keep checking, keep talking. Even if they say they don't want to, even if they say, leave me alone, I don't want you, they want you. They need you, especially if you're that person to them who can help, if you're the best friend, if you're the mom, if you're the aunt, if you're the grandma. And it doesn't necessarily have to be phone calls or texts. So I encourage those because text, it can be really, really hard. So phone calls even more so. It could be just continuing to send cards. It could be continuing to send gifts. It can be just showing up and saying, here, let me fold your laundry. The question of, hey, what can I do for you? I can do anything. Just let me know. I'll do anything. That doesn't work. And that doesn't work in most situations. I remember when our family was going through a rough time and I needed physical help because of what was going on. And people were like, just tell me, I'll do anything. I'll show up anywhere. And what I really needed people to do was just show up and do things. Just do something. I can't. I'm so overwhelmed with grief that I can't also manage you and be like, okay, here's the task that you need to do. And here's the task. No, just show up and do something for them. So keep calling, keep showing up. And that question of, I just got pregnant when my friend just lost a baby, or I just got pregnant and somebody else that I know that I love is going through infertility. Should I talk to them about it? Should I share with them? Yes. The reason is because when you stop sharing that, or let's say you don't invite them to the baby shower or everybody else finds out before them, they feel like they have been excluded and they're other and they're different, when they already feel like they're excluded and other and different because they can't become a mom. So first we go through this, oh, I can't have a baby. My body can't do what it's supposed to do. I'm different than other women, even though that's not really true these days because so many people go through this. And I've failed and I'm bad. And now I have this friend who is part of that mom club. And now they've excluded me from that as well. Do you understand? Now, understand that your friend, your sister, whoever it is, may say no, may not be able to come to the baby shower, may not be able to be there for you in the way that you need her to be there for you because she's too shrouded in her own grief. But give her the grace in that. But don't not invite. Don't not tell. Don't not make the phone call and be like, hey, and even if you want to say it's really hard, hey, this is a hard phone call for me to make because I love you so much and I know you're going through this really rough time because you just lost a baby or because you can't get pregnant, but we're expecting and you're my person and I have to tell you about it and I love you so much. You can do it that way. You can be vulnerable. That's the thing. You can be vulnerable. You can be honest. It's the least you can do with the people that you love who are going through such pain. When you start to withhold and not talk to them about it and not share your own story, you're being selfish. I'm sorry, but it's true. If you have a daughter or a sister or a best friend who is going through this, do you know how much pain that she is in? And all of a sudden you make it about yourself because you're afraid it's going to cause you pain? Absolutely not. Say some prayers to your Jesus and get yourself in front of that person, share your story, be vulnerable, and love on them because you can. Because right now you're strong and she's weak. Next thing I want you to know about when it comes to infertility. One of the things that hurts that you say, first of all, I want you to show up. And I know it's hard to not say the right things. Don't say, oh, it will happen, or everything happens for a reason. Horrible things to say. Sure, down the line now, when my daughters are 15 and my son is 8, and we'll get to his story in just a second, I can see why I lost that first pregnancy and never got pregnant again. I can see why we said no to those 8 babies. I can see why we lost yet another pregnancy that would happen here pretty soon and a failed adoption. I can see all that and how God has used it for his good and for his story. But I would never say it all worked out and it all happened for a reason and it was just like it was supposed to be, because our pain doesn't deserve that. Our pain deserves to be honored. That trauma deserves to have loving arms wrapped around it and say, you know what? This should never happen to anyone. That was horrible what you went through. And even Jesus, even God, even the Holy Spirit, who uses all these things to work out for his good, is still in that pain sitting next to you and going, I wish you didn't have to go through this. He's holding you in your pain and saying, how I wish that we didn't live in a fallen world. And I wish that you didn't have to go through this pain in order to see the glory that will come to the other side. So please never say to somebody, it all worked out. People say that all the time with my story of my 3. Oh, it all worked out. And I still want to hit them. Because if you only knew what I went through, would I do it all again for my 3 kids? Yes. Do I wish that I never had to go through that? Am I scarred in places that will never heal fully as a result? Yes. I'm irreversibly changed as a result of infertility and failed adoptions and miscarriage. Sure, it's made me who I am today, and God has used it, and it's wonderful. but I am broken in so many places that will never be fixed as a result of that. The beauty is that God can fill those in and he can shine through all of our cracks. But even he would not say it all happened for a reason. And isn't it great? Suck it up. It's too painful. The things that you go through are too painful. So please don't say to somebody who's going through infertility or has lost a baby or lost adoption, oh, look, it all happened for a reason. Or, oh, it'll all work out. The other one that I hated was, oh, it's going to happen. You're going to get pregnant. Don't worry. It's going to happen. You don't know that. I would look at stories of people who never became parents or died lonely and be like, that could be me. You do not know what's going to happen. What do you say instead? I'm sorry. I love you. I'm here. I wish you weren't going through this pain. And above all, you can share your own story. Even back in 2006, when I was going through this, when I started, there weren't enough stories. There weren't enough women talking to me saying, here's what happened during my miscarriage. Here's how it felt for me. And those stories would have helped because it would have made me feel less alone. I started this blog about that time because I was in the news and I had to go on 2 maternity leaves. And I started this blog to talk about it, to explain why I was going to be off of the air for 2 separate times. And I found this just world of women who were hungry to hear that they weren't alone in their miscarriage, because that's what you feel like. You feel alone in the miscarriage, like nobody's talking about it and let's keep it really, really, really quiet. And that's horrible. That makes you feel dirty and wrong and other, and it's not. Miscarriage is a part of life. It happens to most women, but it's just like now we're all talking about menopause and perimenopause and it's this beautiful thing so that we can be supported and live through it better and be stronger and healthier as opposed to our parents and our grandparents. Same thing with miscarriage. We talk about it. We build each other up so you can share your story and you can help her through it that way, no matter how hard that is for you. I know it was really hard for my mom, which is why she couldn't really talk about it. Acknowledge her fears. That's the other thing. Don't minimize them. She fears that she's never going to become a parent. If she fears that it's her fault, you can acknowledge her fears. Don't belittle them. Direct her towards places to get help. And like I said, the big one, share your story. All right, so it was supposed to be one infertility episode, infertility and adoption, and I was supposed to share my story and give you some advice for those of you who are going through this or who maybe know family members who are going through this. But the Lord really had me going. So we have decided to do this in 2 different episodes. You just listened to the infertility episode. Coming up next is the adoption episode. So I'm going to share my adoption stories because there is more than one. You know, we have Grace and then we also have Ben, but there were what I call in my book, the lost child in between. So I'm going to share that story with you. And I'm also going to give you some, again, tangible advice if you're going through the adoption process or you know somebody who is. And also the very important way to speak about and around children, people who are adopted. It's nobody's fault, but there is certain verbiage and words that matter when you're talking to somebody who has as a part of their story. This happens to be all around the birthdays of 2 of my children, so it is very, very timely. But coming up on the next episode of StRest, we talk all about adoption. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.